Hey, everybody, welcome to the FreeMind podcast. I'm Nate, your host. Today we are with Seth Goldman. Yeah, that's right. All right, Seth, we are going to talk about purpose. We're going to talk about sustainability, and we're going to talk about resilience. All right, from the man who has carved so many paths for all of you in the food and beverage world and the CPG world, especially in the functional beverage space. This is your episode. And even if this is not your episode because you're not a brand in food and beverage, listen to this story. If you've ever been in a situation where you had an idea and nobody else thought it was a great idea, spend the next 60 minutes with us, all right? We'll talk to you. Let's listen to Seth's story.
You can start with 500, 150, whatever it is. And that's where my goal is with this. On the flip side, there's no agenda, there's no script, and there's no pre-written questions. I'm going straight from the gut and only in the information that's linked in and what I know about you. So I'm going to jump right in.
Great. Well, hi there, Nate. I'm Seth Goldman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Eat the Change, which is the maker of Just Iced Tea. And I've also been the founder of Honest Tea, which we started back in 1998. And then in addition to that, I'm chair of the board of Beyond Meat and also chair of the board of Plant Burger, which is a chain of plant-based restaurants up and down the East Coast.
I'm going to jump right into, I want to know the secret to the energy that you have, because I've been following your careur and you are just full of so tell me what the secret sauce is. Is it
a lot of tea? I really enjoy what I do. I get excited about the work, and for me, that is about the impact that we have, the reaction we get from consumers, as well as the impact we have in these, the sourcing we do. So with the tea, we are buying from communities that really can benefit from the economic opportunities we bring them, both in terms of buying the tea, but also in terms of the fair trade proceeds we bring back to those communities. And then with plant-based foods, what we're able to do is help transform people's diets, to make them healthier, live better lives, but also really help heal the planet. We're strong believers in the environmental benefits of plant-based diets in terms of what they do for the earth and help a movement against what's going on in terms of global warming. So for me, this is all about purpose, and it's something I really enjoy.
Now you were, this is anecdotally from my perception as a consumer, with your spearheading with Honest Tea and the plant-based diet. What was the point when you realized, those of us that have been in this for a while, we've seen a lot of different functional beverages and different things come through. When was the moment where you decided putting all the chips in? Because you guys, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to give you credit. I mean, you paved the way for a lot of people that are in the functional beverage and all these other places today. And with that, being an entrepreneur myself on a very smaller scale, I know that it was a bloody process and it was not easy. And that's what we want. I want my viewers to not see Seth Goldman's story of like how he's always winning and he's always successful.
Oh yeah, thank you.
I want to go back. I want to go back to the beginning of Honest Tea days, and you and Alba and kind of coming to the place where you're like, this is going to be mainstream and we're going to have to drive it ourselves almost. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot of moments of that.
No, there was going back to 1998. So we were doing three things people didn't do. First, sell a drink with less calories in it. Everybody was leaning into those really super sweet drinks or artificial calories. So that first, just lower calorie profile. And then we were the first to make organic drinks back in 1999. So that was, again, really early. And then we were also the first to make fair trade certified drinks, which people just didn't know about. And it was, we knew we could have grown faster if we made the drinks sweeter, if we made the drinks cheaper, but we felt like what we were doing was important. And we also really wanted to stand for something. And over time, that was where the value was. We were valuable because we created something different. And so, it's not hard to follow what everyone else is doing, but it's hard to build something valuable when you follow what everyone else is doing.
Exactly. At that time, you're sitting next to the shelf of, let's say, like SoBe and Honest Tea. And because literally what you just said, I mean, you couldn't talk about two polar opposite products that were just running at that time. And at that age, I was 99. I'm entering high school. I'm your prime consumer at that age. Things that but I was a fan. I was on your boat. You know what I mean? I drank the stuff when it was there, but it was just see the juxtaposition of those two products kind of paving the way for what they both existed in separately. How hard was it to sit down? Because I'm sure there's other pieces where I'm going to assume you guys had opportunities where people were offering, money to change the formation and or money to do this and all these opportunities to break your principles. How did those conversations go, and how did you support each other in staying true to your path?
No, there's no question. We did have investors say, "Oh, well, you should just make it sweeter, and you'll sell more." And for us, we were really building a brand that meant something, and we always knew. And one of the best pieces of advice I got was from a board member who said, build this brand like you're going to want to own it forever. So don't do things that are opportunistic in the short term. Make sure you really want to. And so we knew from just our own personal taste, we were thirsty for the kind of drink Honest Tea represented. We didn't need, and the world didn't need another sweet drink. There were just so many of them. So we really did stick to it. And we were selling well in the natural channel. We weren't selling as well in the mainstream channel. And what we did do in 2003 is we moved to what we call just a tad sweet. So initially everything had 17 calories. We moved to 30 calories per 8-ounce serving. And that was just sweet enough that it could sort of make it appeal to a wider audience, but still stand out and be different. Of course, so many people have moved toward that calorie profile now, but at the time it was still really distinct and different, and people did recognize this was something valuable and that they could appreciate.
Absolutely. And for anybody too at that time, you're let's talk about the partnership between Jessica Alba and yourself, and how you guys ever came yeah, no worries, you're good. Yeah. I do this thing sometimes.
Yeah. No, there's no partnership between us and Jessica Alba. So that's a separate company.
Sorry, the word partnership was the wrong word. I'm sorry. How you guys came together as far as her and you guys supporting and kind of going where you were going.
It was really independent. I mean, if anything, it was that we failed to secure the website honest.com.
Gotcha.
So we had Honest Tea out there, and then they launched that Honest company, and it was we had to sort of work out a coexistence agreement. But so I think we agreed to coexist, but there was never really.
That's actually what I was trying to say. I was trying to get to the point where in the industry of food and beverage, it's very hard to come up with names. It's very hard to come up with different creative ideas. And a lot of people just crush each other when that happens. Yeah. And what I wanted to say was, how did you guys come to an agreement where you could exist together in the world? Yeah.
Yeah, no, we had created something meaningful and valuable that stood apart. And then we just had to find a way to coexist. And we said, basically, we've got food and drink. We're not going into diapers or shampoo. So that part of it, wasn't too hard to iron out.
No, that's great, and that's the reason I brought it up is you don't see that often. A lot of times it's the cease orders, it's the lawsuits, and it's all the mess. And everything like that. The fact that 20 years later you guys are still existing is just an testament to you can work together in some fashions,
Yeah, although of course Honest Tea is no longer on the market. Honest Kids is still out there, but it was sad to see Honest Tea disappear. On the other hand, it created the opportunity we have with Just Iced Tea. So it was that's what I'm leading. Yeah,
I'm leading right in there. I'm leading right in there, and that the SKU is off the shelf. But talk about your current project. Let's talk about talk about what you're currently doing and what is replacing Honest Tea on the shelf, and how it's part of your mission and your core driver.
Yeah. So just about 2 years ago now, I got this unexpected call from the Coca-Cola company and the senior managers who told me they were going to be discontinuing Honest Tea. They were going to keep Honest Kids, but that Honest Tea was going to be discontinued. And first, I just was so sad, and really our whole network of all the people who built that brand reached out. We were all heartbroken because this brand meant something. We put so much into it, and for about a week we just were sad. And then basically after that week, we sort of bounced back and said, well wait a minute, if Honest Tea is going away, what's happening to all that shelf space? And we realized that was an immediate opportunity, and it was also a really important need for those communities, all those partners that we had sourced from. We were going to need to, they were going to lose a key part of their income. And so they reached out to us, we reached out to them, and we said, we think we want to do this. They're like, let's go. And then the retailers started reaching out, and we reached out to retailers, and very quickly we realized we needed to move quickly because this was May, and we were going to have the product on the shelf before the cold weather sets in. So we took 90 days to move it, leap into action. And of course, we knew all the supply chain partners, and we knew how to make it happen quickly. We already got authorizations from some of the key retailers like Sprouts and Whole Foods, who said they were going to jump in, and Giant Food here in Maryland. And so it happened quickly, but it wasn't it wasn't we say it wasn't really a startup. It was more of a jump start.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're in startup mode for the energy, but you didn't have to go do the research. You know what I mean? That's you can accelerate it. That's awesome.
That's right. Yeah, we knew which were going to be the best sellers. We knew, where the sourcing, where those ingredients would come from, and the bottling plants, and all of that.
Well, Seth, I mean, it's one of those things where that's why my first question about your energy is I'm going to lead into something else here. About 2 hours ago at 8 a.m. this morning, I had a meeting with a founder of Crunchy Hydration. I don't know if you ever heard it's beverage. And so it's a hemp-based functional beverage, sparkling water, probiotics, all kinds of all the functional categories in one can. The reason I'm bringing it up is I went through and talked to her, and she's in her 20s, and graduated a couple years ago from college, started this business. And I asked her who her inspiration was, and she had no idea that you and I were meeting today. And she named you. And in the moment, I had to tell her, I stopped her and I just said, I need to tell you that I'm going to dedicate to you, that I'm going to name your brand, and I'm going to tell Seth, because she didn't believe me. I was like, I have a meeting with him in 90 minutes. And I don't say that as a brag. I say that as, this is what I do. I'm a connector, and I'm constantly working the floors and putting people together to make things happen. And I don't expect anything to happen other than the fact that I want you to know that there are still people reading your story and starting new businesses. Nice. While my point is of honesty not being on the shelf, the legacy and the motivation and the mission still exists. So talk a little bit about that. Is success right there. That is success beyond and above the product. And I want to compliment you, but I also want to know how you build that, because that is something that everybody wants. Everybody wants it. They're fun. It's still motivating. And the fact that that's from an iced tea. So think about you started a business, and I love iced tea. I grew up on iced tea, and I switched to yours because I was drinking so much of it. I had to stop drinking so much of the sugar-based and everything like that. So when I switched to Honest Tea and went over, I can't believe that. I just love. I mean, just go ahead, jump into like what it feels like to have something inspire people, and then carry on past the can.
Well, thank you for saying that. I'm glad to hear about that entrepreneur you spoke with. And one of the things we did is we did write a book. Let me grab I got a copy here. We wrote a comic book actually about our business. So that was the goal, was to help make it accessible. And it's certainly helped.
Very nice.
Yeah, called Mission in a Bottle. And so the goal was to make our story accessible, not just for business school students, but everybody. And so maybe that's how, one of the ways she got heard about it. But I think there were other entrepreneurs when we were launching Honest Tea that inspired us, and I was glad to be able to see that we can be part of that chain. And I think when you create a brand that has meaning and purpose to it, it lasts longer. It means more to people, even if it gets discontinued, it still means something to people. And by the way, Honest Kids is actually now well on its way to becoming $1 billion brand. So
I have 6 kids in this house, and it's in our.
That's great. Yeah. So we don't feel like that was a lost or wasted effort. But I think the thing we always try to do with both Honest Tea and now with Just Iced Tea is to do it the right way. Do it in a way that you can always be proud of, and that means that the way you interact with your partners, your suppliers, and then with the environment. And those are the brands that really get connected to people. And sometimes we're probably not as social media electric as some brands, but we also think we're building something more enduring than a spike in social media. And so
that's the thing. I can tell you anecdotally, like from the circles I'm in, we are all your direct customer, and your story resonates whether you're on the shelf or not. And actually, in all honesty, it resonates even more because I respect you as an individual, because not only that, you paved the way in the taking the sugar out of American consumers' mouths, which is the hardest thing I think anybody can do, take that sugar away from an American. And on top of that, that wasn't enough for Seth. You're going to go after the hamburger market. And that's the most American thing you can do. So we're talking as American as apple pie, iced tea, and burgers, and you're flipping the script. So walk me through your internal balance.
Yeah.
When you're like, I was setting that up, and that energy you built to run that team that way too.
Well, so let's go first on what you mentioned about the calories. So just look at what we did by getting Honest Kids into McDonald's. And of course, this was us plus Coca-Cola plus McDonald's all being part of that decision. But we replaced Honest Kids, a 35-calorie drink. It replaced an 80-calorie juice box they had. So that's a 45-calorie differential. We lose that every time someone takes our product. And we still sell over 200 million units of Honest Kids in McDonald's every year. So that means over 1 billion calories are being removed from the American diet. It means that millions of kids every year are getting introduced to organic much earlier than they expected, because as far as I know, most people don't go to McDonald's looking for organic products. And so you're also helping acclimate those taste buds to a less sweet taste profile. If a kid is okay with an Honest Kids drink from McDonald's, then maybe I don't need all that sugar the next time I'm making another purchasing decision. So that's a great example of impact. And with Beyond Meat, we are the Beyond Burger is now launched throughout Europe in McDonald's, and so it's really exciting to see. We just in Germany have a special promotion going on with Beyond Meat and the menu, and so hasn't happened in the United States yet. But yeah, again, if you can introduce people in a channel like McDonald's to a plant-based diet, and they say, hey, it's delicious, I don't have to radically change my behavior, I can still enjoy eating the things I love, but I can do it in a way that has a much lighter environmental footprint, that has less cholesterol, less saturated fat, so it's good for me and for the planet. Obviously, it's very good for the animal. Then that's a really exciting step we can take. So, I think we all want to change the world in a positive way. Some changes happen, a little more gradually, and you just have to sort of find the opportunities and make it as easy as you can for the consumer. And I know some people frown on that and say, well, we've got to, people have to make sacrifices, but it's very tough to market sacrifices. We want you to enjoy eating less. We want you to do things that are, eat your broccoli is just a tough marketing message.
No, that's exactly it. And you're right. It doesn't matter how healthy something is if it's not convenient. Humans in general won't, to a most extent, humans won't really get into it. So I think you got to meet
them where they are. And just as it is, so we're selling bottled tea. Someone could argue, well, you shouldn't be packaging things in individual containers. It's such a waste of all that packaging. And I understand that mindset, but it's also not realistic in terms of where the consumer is. And you're not going to change something if you have that perfect, perfect can be the enemy of the good. And so you've got to be able to understand the context you're operating in.
That's excellent. When you're kind of going through things, and now you're in the Tony's chocolate world, and you're not necessarily as talk about your role there and how that's a little bit different than your other roles.
Yeah, this is an unusual one. When we were launching Honest Tea in Europe, I got to know a guy named Douglas Lamont, who was running Innocent, which is a beverage brand based in Europe. It's a juice brand. And so we got to be friendly and learn a lot about what each other was doing. And Douglas then went on to become the CEO of Tony's Chocolonely, which is a Netherlands-based chocolate brand that has a very high level of commitment to developing an exploitation-free supply chain for cocoa. And what that means is really understanding that child labor is endemic in the cocoa supply chain out of West Africa, and really committing to combating that and sourcing in a way that addresses it. And so as Douglas was scaling the business, he realized there was a risk, because the business, whether it's raising money and looking at the future, whether it goes public or gets acquired, there's always that risk that somehow that mission could get diluted. So he reached out to me and said, I'd like you to chair what we want to call the guardians of our mission. And so basically we have this sort of eternal license to basically be overseeing what happens to the company, whether it gets bought or goes public. We'll always have that right, and it's to protect the mission. And if we see something that we think is a compromise to the mission, we get to call it out. We do it both publicly and internally. And so as part of that, I've gotten the chance to learn more about the cocoa supply chain. I've traveled to Cote d'Ivoire, or the Ivory Coast, where most of their cocoa is sourced, where most of the world's cocoa is sourced, by the way. And it's very different than tea, because in cocoa, it really is the case, over 70% of the supply chain has child labor involved in it in West Africa. So that's a huge issue. And so the question isn't does it exist? The question is how do you recognize it, and then how do you deal with it? And it was a little disappointing to see the world's largest chocolate companies sort of treat it, sort of turn a blind eye, but just have a very slight way of touching it, whereas Tony's goes much deeper. And so they have investing in schools, investing in the inspections to understand it, and then when they do find child labor, helping transition the child workers to apprenticeships, to real work, as opposed to where they can develop a career versus working underage. So so that's been interesting work, and it's we've been at it for a little more than a year, and always interesting for me to look at a different supply chain and just think about how it relates to the work we do in tea.
Well, and on that supply chain part, you're not just buying things from people. You're looking at everything that touches and everything that surrounds each decision and each engagement. And I really want, are there, from an operational standpoint, let's say, like if I'm in your shoes right now, how is the communication and distribution of that message done across all of your different platforms to keep things consistent from the top?
Yeah. So, they're different. The companies aren't related. In this case, it's really more just for me on educational, professional development opportunity. But with respect to tea, we always make sure our partners understand what we're doing. So it's not just the certifications, but whenever we have a chance, I was just on with a customer yesterday. We've been talking for basically, a half hour about all the things we were doing together. I said, wait, have you guys seen our sourcing video? And they hadn't. I'm like, I got to show you what we're doing so they understand what's important to us and where we're coming from. And I think one of the learnings there is never assume a customer isn't interested in understanding the broader context of what you do. It's too easy just to get right into we're going to do this trend, we're going to do this promotion here and this promotion there. I said, but wait, do you know who we are? Do you know what we're doing? And so, in this case, we had a 1-minute video, so it's important. I want you to sit and show you. I want to show you my 3-part documentary. No, let me show you 1 minute. So do you have a 1-minute video that can encapsulate what you're about? And so even in the context of a 30-minute meeting, that 1-minute video is worth showing to people. And so for me, I think I just have to continually remind myself and my team like that. Don't assume that's not important to people, because the thing that we're around it a lot, so we sort of see it. But for people who don't know anything about it, most people have never seen a tea booth before. Most people have never seen, how that all gets processed. And so all of that is important. And maybe even Nate, somewhere in the show notes, I can send you the link and you can attach it, because it gives it a whole different perspective. And we did a presentation in New York. We have this amazing distributor in New York, Big Geyser, and I spoke at their annual meeting, and we were sort of on the fence, because we only had 10 minutes. So like, well, do we show the video? I'm like, yeah, we got to show the video. And we showed the video. And afterwards, a lot of the the sales reps came up to me, and so many of them are from all around the world because it's such an international city. They said that was the most moving, impactful part of the presentation I saw all day. And, so just don't underestimate the importance of telling and sharing your story and why it's important to you.
That right there, I have to thank you. You just validated a project that I'm working on, and I'm going to run through a wall with it this afternoon. Now you validated it, and it's exactly that. It's off of this podcast. We've been doing a lot of outbound, trying to get people to understand how important their story is over their products now. And speaking for myself, I spent 25 years, working with Miller Coors, Heineken, all the big brands, doing all localized and national distribution and marketing. And we never talked about the brands. We never talked about the Heineken family being one of the few family-owned businesses in the world. All these different things that are so cool and I loved, but the people didn't really know. And I think that what I want to say is that not to keep going back to honesty, I'm sorry, but I want to say that when you're an entrepreneur, that's the complement of what honesty is. It doesn't matter if it's on the shelf or not. When you actually put your story correctly with your product, your story lives with the product. And that's what I want to say. And with that, talking about how do you constantly, you're looking at all these great things about how you're changing the world. Where is your boundary as far as where you can't? I know you have trouble saying yes or saying no to things. I know that's what I'm trying to get at, is like, what is the line eventually where it's like, you know what, that's a subject matter that we can't really, doesn't align with us, and because that also, I can tell you're a very empathetic person and a sensitive person. Like that I'm sure there's pain in that as well, in trying to draw boundaries in your business.
Yeah. Look, I'm happy to share our story with anybody who wants to learn and listen. And again, it's not just about selling tea. It's also about expanding awareness about this whole approach to business. And if we think that can be useful, we'll do that. I think for me, where I draw lines is, you asked earlier where I get my energy from. So I definitely do make sure to protect time with my family. I'm not going to, I need to make sure when I'm with my family, I'm present. So I'm not going to go, we just were at a family event, and I had this amazing, sort of opportunity to do a TV show, and it's like, I can't do it then. I'm with my family, and so you do have to sort of make those lines, and that's kind of interesting because my father was a professor, but he was an expert on the Russian economy, and he would we always joked he would do TV interviews no matter what came up, and he was an amazing person, but his, I think he felt sort of when the news hit, you got to go after it. And I think with the business, it's a little different. Like, okay, I can't do this show. There'll be something else. And so for me, I just sort of keeping in perspective what's going to be important. So that's probably the only line I'll have. I got to protect my time with my family. But other than that, especially now that my kids are out of the house, I don't mind traveling or getting up early or whatever to help share and spread the story.
Yeah, I think for me, like I traveled around the country a lot in my life, doing all the breweries and stuff like that, and I think there was a lot of moments where I deprioritized family and overprioritized work, and I will always regret it. It's a conversation I'm having with my daughter recently, as she's 13 years old and things like that. She's talking about a lot of time I was gone and things like that. And I'm glad you said that, because it's a reflective time of balance. And I think that for me, I grew up, I didn't come from anything. I came blue collar family and everything like that. And I was one of the first in my family to go to college. And I grew up on Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur magazine. I started this business that we're talking through when I was in college. And so this business started in 2008. And I've had about 25 other entities that I've started since then that failed, but this one's always been there. And it's just an evolution of content generation. Started off booking bands in college in Philadelphia at Drexel, and kind of evolved from there. Where I want to talk to you a little bit about too is go back further, like you mentioned about your father. Take me prior to all these brands, and take me to your high school times. I mean, your brand is taking me back to my high school days. Take me back to you. And did you ever really? I'll ask the cheesy line. Did you ever see this?
So, what's interesting about when I was in high school, I was doing a lot of multitasking. What I mean by that is, so I did sports teams. I was in the musical. I was president of the school. I was doing debates. So I had a lot of different things going on, which on the one hand, wasn't necessarily running an organization, but I was doing a lot of different disciplines. And of course I had studies too, and classes. And so, that kind of multitasking work really is what an entrepreneur does. And so I knew I wanted to be creating something. I just didn't know what it was going to be. And I actually thought, probably in high school, I thought of myself going more into politics. I thought that was going to be a path for me. What we're doing is very much cause related, but it is commercial for sure. This is not a political enterprise. And I do have to, occasionally remind my team, like, look, we're not going to get involved in this or that cause. It doesn't help build our mission. So for me, it was definitely mission related work was what attracted me and inspired me. And I did the same in college again, doing both sort of sports and music and government stuff, some politics, but I wasn't. So it was always that multitasking work. And so this was a natural evolution, even though I certainly didn't expect to end up in the beverage. I had no connection to the beverage industry. I mean, I drank drinks just like everybody does, but there was nothing in my past that would have sort of suggested this was where I was going. I did after college. I did spend a year in China and a year and a half in Russia, which are both big tea drinking cultures. So I got to learn a lot about the role tea plays in those societies. But again, that wasn't preordained that I would go into tea.
That's when you go in for. Are you still in the Bethesda area, or are you?
Yeah.
Are you
Oh yeah, that's where we're based. Yep. I started Honest Tea out of my house, and then we moved to this office with Honest Tea in 2007. And then when I announced that I was going to be moving on from Honest Tea, I told Coca-Cola. They said, well, we're going to move the team, the Honest Tea brand team, down to Atlanta. And I said, well, I'll just take over the office lease. And so I took that over at the end of 2019. And so we've been in the same office. I've been in the same office for 17 years now.
My parents are from the Eastern, I'm from Philadelphia originally, but they currently live in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. So not too far from you over there. My mom worked in, she was a gifted program. She taught the gifted program for Washington County School District. So, yeah. So not that far away over there, but where you are. Talking a little bit more to kind of the back end of, so for people like in my demographic and my age group, we grew up with Tom's shoes. We all grew up with like the give one, take one, all that stuff. How is it? And we've also seen that not work. And we've also seen it work, and we've seen it not work. How have you successfully balanced generously giving back, whether monetarily, resources, time, and treasure, and running a profitable business?
Yeah. So for us, what's neat about what we're doing, and this was with Honest Tea and Just Iced Tea, is it's always nice when somebody understands our broader purpose and is motivated by that. But the business model is based on nobody has to know. Like the product has to taste good, has to be well branded, has to have an attractive design so it moves off the shelf, and somebody can buy it, enjoy it, and not have any idea of all those things we're doing. And it's still competitive price point. It's, and satisfies their need. People don't hire us to save the world. People hire us to quench their thirst. And so we got to make sure we do that first. And if we do that well, they'll stick with us. They're not going to reject us because, I found out that 10% of the tea ingredient they're buying, 10% of the purchase price of their tea goes to a community in Mozambique that helped, that's not a negative. It's not a positive. It doesn't, and it certainly doesn't have a material impact on the prices. So as you know, the packaging of our bottle costs 20, an empty glass bottle costs 20 cents. The tea ingredient in our tea probably is about 4 to 5 cents. So if it's fair trade, that means it may be 4.5 or 5.5 cents. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really impact the consumer in terms of what they choose to buy. So they can enjoy our product without understanding any of that, and they're no worse for it. So for us, the way this works is that we just have to go out and do the job the consumer hired for us, and then we can have all that impact without them knowing about it, or they can really know about it and be inspired by it, and that's obviously works as well.
That's an interesting. You're actually the first person that's ever said it that way, and I think that a lot of times we get into these conversations, and especially when I was a brand manager, it was like every day, like different people pitching us for distribution, and nobody was able to find that balance. And I think the way you said it just gave a lot of light on it. It's that in order to make a profitable business, you still have to make something that's not complicated for people. And like the more you complicate it by overtly putting all of your missions on the can and on the bottle and on the box or whatever it is, you're complicating the consumer's decision. And that's, I think that it's hard. And it's hard as me, like trying to explain that to people who are mission based and be like, you do need to tell your story, but it needs to be on their terms.
But you're missing, if you lead with that, you're missing what's going to drive that purchase decision. Someone's going to choose to buy our product because they think it's delicious, not because they want to support a community on the other side of the world. On the other hand, our name, Just Iced Tea, obviously has a double meaning, right? Justice, Just Iced Tea. Same with Honest Tea. And so if somebody, often people say, well, what does that mean? Or they may choose to read the back of the label where we talk about our key relationships with our suppliers and why that's important to us. And then, as I said, we have this website where you can see the videos and learn more about those things. So we certainly don't hide it, but we just don't lead with it because it's not what's going to drive a purchase decision.
And I've always thought the most subtle ways to do it was, and I'm some people get offended when I say this, and I'm sorry to anybody, but it's because the consumer you're looking for is going to look at the nutrition facts. So you can be subtle and put the location of where to find the information on the nutrition facts, and because the other person who's buying it is never going to look at the back. Because the person, I mean, I'm being honest. Like, it's like the person that you're targeting is going to look at the back. And
we talk about that label reader, right? That's our consumer, and partially because they're, you know, they are going to appreciate the calorie profile is going to, you know, appeal to them.
Yeah, and I want to elaborate too, and walk me through a little bit in your life. You're not just a guy that has his own business. I mean, you're a community driven leader. You worked in Maryland with economic development and things like that. Talk a little bit about outside of your business and outside of yourself as a human being. What drives you to spread yourself out? And when I say spread yourself out thin, I don't mean that as a negative thing, because you like us that are multitaskers, that's a challenge. That's not a mistake. So how, you know, where do you bring that joy and energy to go far outside of just the business too?
Yeah, so, you know, I think it's really important to continue to have that intellectual curiosity, just to learn more, develop more, and look, you could say, oh man, you started Honesty in 1998. That means for 26 years you've been doing the same thing. And it never feels like I'm doing the same thing. No one day is the same. So for me, you know, meeting other entrepreneurs is a great way to learn about the broader context we operate in, but also different approaches to management, different approaches to economic challenges people face. You know, we're part of this community. As you said, I've been in the Maryland. We moved to Maryland in 1995, and I've been in this community for almost 30 years now. So, you know, it's home, and I want to make sure it's a place we want to continue to live and obviously help build it. And so we are, you know, my whole family's been really engaged in this community, helping. My wife's planted over 200 trees in our neighborhood. You know, obviously I was the head of our school, the public school, the foundation they had when they were raising money for renovation. And so, you know, these are things that just are natural ways to help us feel more connected to our community and to help serve the community that has given so much to us. So these are all, I don't call it professional development or just natural extensions of the work I'm doing. And there's a funny saying, you may have heard this, which is, if you want something done, ask a busy person to do it. So, you know, people know if I'm going to get involved, I'm going to make things happen, and I'm not going to get soaked up in bureaucratic meetings. And we're going to meet, we're going to get it done. And if we have a call and then we make a decision in the first 3 minutes, we don't need 30 minutes. And I'm going to say, yep, we're done. So,
oh man, we are in the same ballpark. I always tell people when I meet them for the first time, like, buckle up, Buttercup, because we're going for a ride. Walk me through, when you have younger entrepreneurs or even older entrepreneurs. I don't want to put an age on it, because I've seen a lot of people, and even myself, been in evolutions. And I say old, I'm almost 40. I feel like I'm 100 years old in food and beverage, in the food and beverage world. When you hit 20 years,
dog years, you got to count it in dog years. Food and beverage.
I started getting into it really right out of high school, fixing broken cases of beer in the back of a warehouse, and then worked my way through. And what I want to say to that is, how do you, I mean, you got to get fielded by questions all the time at conferences and conventions from entrepreneurs, young, old, all between, whether they're in their business or they're getting ready to start an idea. How do you tell them, like, what to do? I try to think about, a lot of people ask me from a smaller scale, and they're like, how do you keep doing when you haven't made my question always is, if you haven't made $1 million yet, you've been doing it for 20 years, why are you still doing it? I get that question every day. And I tell people that all the time, and I tell them because I love it, and I know I'm making a difference in a different scale. How do you talk to other people to prep them for that, both, and in a raw and authentic way? You know what I mean? And showing the grit and the grind and all of it.
Well, one thing. So last I guess 2 weeks ago now, I was on a panel in California with the founder of Poppy and the founder of Body Armor, and the moderator was saying something like, "Well, if people are benchmarking, you know, where should they be?" I'm like, nobody should be benchmarking off of these three, you know, our brand and those brands, because those are just rocket ships, you know. And so, you know, what you really got to do is sort of identify your own steps where you go. And one of my sayings is actually on a bottle cap is, you know, sailors don't steer by other ships, they steer by the stars, right? So you should really think about what are the key things that you want to objectives you want to hit. Don't worry about comparing yourself to others all the time, because every enterprise, every person has their own pace of doing things. Things have to make sense, and from a business perspective, you have to demonstrate viability as a business. But if you're trying to say, oh, Honest Tea, or Just Iced Tea hit $16 million in its second year in sales, we're never going to do that. Well, yeah, that's a different thing. You could go back to Honest Tea and say, well, Honest Tea did $250,000 its first year, and that was a it takes different enterprises and different businesses at different stages of a category, at different stages of development with different funding, each operate in their own way. So, I think you just have to understand what your contexts are. Just so we say to our kids, don't always measure yourself against other kids, measure yourself against yourself.
And that's really what it comes down to, is and understanding the confidence issue. I think one of the things we're more vocal about than when I was growing up is people in their 20s and stuff like that, or let's say in the late teens, they're not necessarily more confident, but they're more intuitive and they're more self-reflective of their faults sometimes. And I think that can be a good and a bad. And I think that we went through, when I grew up, everything was superficial, everything was selfish, everything was just glitz and glamour, spits and shine, and all that stuff. And I think we're getting to this place now where everybody just wants raw and real. And I think that brands like yourself and with Just Tea and what you're doing with Tony's and all that, that is the future. And I think that what you've done is to say to you, to look at what you've done from the beginning and then look where you are now. Not many people have sustained the energy that you have sustained. And then also most people would have went through one route and stayed on that route. And I just want to say, like, you're a badass. Like, you really you really are. Like, it's like, you don't give up, you don't quit, and you don't see challenges, you see opportunities. Yeah, and it's not just for yourself. Yeah. It's like the fact that you could have easily done this and never helped anyone in your life and retired. Mm-hmm. And you could be retired right now. And I just want to say, like, just don't stop. Like, don't stop.
Thank you, Nate. I appreciate that.
Because there's too many people. There's too many people in this world that are in your position, want to put down everybody else and keep everything for themselves. And the only way this world's going to keep existing is more people like yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, one of the things I always tell my team is, look, we're not an Honest Tea retread. So yes, we understand the formula and the approach that got Honest Tea to a certain level. And so we're going to follow that path to a point, but then we've got to make sure we are continuing to challenge ourselves. So one of the things we've just done is we've launched a line of cans, right? So this now is just hitting the market, Just Iced Tea in a can. And again, different playbook, different customer, different package, different promotional strategy. And so, we have to make sure we have to continue to challenge ourselves. And just like I said, I don't ever walk in and have the same day. It's not the same. The business is operating in a totally different dynamic. I mean, when I launched Honest Tea in 1998, there was no Instagram, there was no e-commerce. So you just gotta, continue to evolve and continue to learn.
I joke around a lot, and I haven't told this story, but I'll tell it here for the first time. In the beer industry, we always have this festivals and conventions and all that stuff. And when I started social media in the beer industry, it was called the Beer Ace, and it was this whole mascot and this whole mentality. And I went around the country, like, doing interviews and there's all the content online. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, I tell people all the time, kids today, they're like, PPC ads and this and that. And I show them these photos. I'm at beer festivals with business cards that had QR codes in 2008 to 2015. And I was going around going Vistaprint, getting like 10,000 of them printed. And I would just go around and take pictures and selfies of people and hand out the business cards. And they're like, you didn't do pay-per-click ads or anything? I was like, we didn't have that. You had to go out to a festival and you had to sweat it out. And I would go volunteer at festivals and conventions just so I can get in for free to hand out my cards on the floor. And I ended up at the end getting like 25,000 followers. And at that time, that is like the equivalent of like 1 million now.
Right, right.
It's like, and it's the fact that was all hand sold. 25,000 is something that I tell people. I'm like, you guys got it easy now. But with that as well, we're closing out here, and I want to kind of I'm going to tell you, I'm persistent, but I'm not annoying. So I do want to have other conversations eventually down the road when it works in your schedule, not necessarily on camera. I think there's some things we can do together. And I think some different ways we can look at a couple things. With that though, I want you to, what ways today, if you were to leave something with somebody at any age that's getting ready to start, like with the way the world is today, they're looking at inflation, they're looking at jobs, they're looking at everything, and it's all doom and gloom. And they're looking at, 6 months from now, we're having a civil war. What's the point? What is, I mean, it's just to be frank. I mean, what do you tell somebody that it doesn't have let's say the confidence and let's take it this way, full context. The idea's in their head and they just haven't taken the action, and it's been in their head for 4 years, 5 years. Best. What's the advice for them?
I would say you never give up on an idea. You don't have to go all in on it all at once. So, keep developing that idea. It can be weekend work. It could be going to farmers markets. If you got a drink, selling it out of a stand. It could be sharing it with relatives. There's ways to move something forward, even if it's not the full blown enterprise. I mean, it was the fall of 1997 when I started to put the ideas for Honest Tea together. And it was clear there was enough. I was working with my co-founder, Barry. We were making teas in the kitchen on weekends. We'd share them. I'd go out for lunch with people and share samples. There was enough. By the time I had got to that winter of 97, it was clear there was enough energy and opportunity that I felt like, all right, I'm ready to take the leap. But, if it had taken another year, I could have really moved things along. I mean, it was fun. I don't regret what we did, but there's ways to move something forward, to explore it enough. And just as a lot of people, my wife and I just had our third son, so it wasn't I didn't take lightly the idea of leaving a steady job, but I felt like there was enough there that it was the time to do it. Alternatively, I had actually at a business school, a classmate and I had won a business plan for a diagnostic company, and we were working on it on the weekends and talking about it. And it was a neat idea. We actually had someone who wanted to invest, but we just personally each weren't excited enough about the idea to take that leap. So you got to listen to yourself. And when this idea came up, I knew I was both getting the feedback I was getting from people was positive, and I was getting so excited about it. I knew I had to take that leap. So you got to really listen to your body, and to your mind. And I think the other thing is, for me, I know when I tell people, like, never take a job where you don't feel like you're working in what you believe in, and I guess that sounds simple. Maybe it even sounds obvious, but so many people, do these jobs that are meaningless. And then it's kind of like, if you get used to that, then it's very hard to get out of it. You get acclimated. Maybe you get used to, like, the salary. I'm not excited about what I'm doing, but the salary's good. Well, then you live a lifestyle that depended on that salary, then you're kind of trapped. And so, we actually had a very lean with our three sons. I mean, we didn't have cable TV. We just, we would have to sort of choose, what are they going to do? They were able to do, so religious education and baseball, but we couldn't pay them both at the same time. And it's like, we'll just, we'll make it work. But, we certainly weren't living this lavish lifestyle that was dependent on, a high paying job. And so to just think about what's really important. And if you keep that in mind, it's easier to make professional choices.
And I'm glad you said it that way. And really, it's more that the job is more than a job. I mean, if you're in a job, I've been in lots of jobs that I hated. I've gone in when I say about 2008, I've not always been on my own. I've taken full-time jobs throughout the evolution, and just like most entrepreneurs do. And it actually just happened. I took a job in January this year, and I'm not going to name where it was, but it was, I could not even get up I couldn't do it. I couldn't even do it. And I had no power. I had no engagement and no relationship with it. And within 4 months, I left. And I left very nicely and just said, "This is not for me, and I just do not have anything to give you." And that's and what it is one of those things that it's understanding that there's more than just the money. And I like what you said too about when that festering there. And most times I tell people, it's like when you start taking action is when that idea comes up when unprompted. So when you start getting woke up at 3 a.m. and you're writing stuff, when your brain is in the point where you have to start writing stuff down because it's flooding you.
Yep.
it's time to think about that. So Seth, I thank you so much for your time today. I really hope I can have more conversations with you. I would love to in person. You're not that far away from me. If you ever want to, I can come down your way. I'm not trying to be creepy or anything like that. I do love the Bethesda, Great Falls area. I have lots of friends down there. So, but in the flip side, tell everybody how they can reach you, Seth. And I just I want you to know genuinely, as we hang up here, like I want everybody to know that I love what I'm doing here, and this the fact that I can talk to you and thank you for what you did, because I'll be honest, I'll go very deep for you. The amount of iced tea and different things. I've always been a husky guy. I'm 6'3", 300 pounds. I don't even know what my life. I don't know if I would have had a wrestling career that got me into D1 school if I didn't start drinking your goods. So
That's like,
Seth, thank you so much for your time. And please, before we hang up, I want you to just list through all the different brands that you're part of right now so people can follow your work.
Sure. Thank you, Nate. And I've enjoyed this time here. And we didn't even get to talk about wrestling. I didn't realize
maybe that'll be the end. Hey, here's the deal. When your schedule works, I'll come down to you. We'll sit down at a coffee shop, bar, whatever you want, and we'll talk wrestling. All right?
Yeah, for me, I was a very mediocre high school wrestler, but it had a huge impact on my psyche and confidence. And I always said, my son was a really good wrestler, and once you get through wrestling, you feel like it's going to be hard to get intimidated by much, So I'm on LinkedIn. I think that's probably the most active way to follow me. I'm somewhat on Twitter, but I've got to say it's got a lot less interesting these days. So, but LinkedIn is the main way to follow me. And then of course our company, Just Iced Tea and Eat the Change, both have handles that you can follow it. Eatthechange.com would be the most obvious way, and then beyondmeat.com and PLNTburger.com, and then Tony's Chocolate Lonely again.com. So that's the way to sort of see all the different companies I'm into. And like I say, definitely want to encourage people to see the video, that sourcing video I mentioned. That's a great way to understand what we're doing and why it's important to us.
Yep, and that'll be right down here in the description. If you guys, as we're closing out, if you click this link, take that 60 seconds and watch that video and learn the story there. Tony, thank you so. Or sorry, not Tony. Seth, thank you so much. I was thinking, selfishly, I do consume those chocolates a lot. So thank you very much for that. The logo was in my head, and if anybody has not seen those yet, they are definitely something that stands out in the chocolate shelves in the organic section of your favorite grocery store. So, Seth, thank you so much. You are an inspiration for everybody. I know you hear that a lot, but I want you to hear it sincerely. There is no script. There is no agenda in this. For anybody watching, I do want to remind you, just like Seth said, sometimes we have to remind people about what our mission is. This is 55 minutes ago. Seth and I have met for the first time on the record button. Whatever you heard is not fake. It's real. It's genuine. This is the realest thing on the internet. This is human people connecting. This is what life is all about. Seth Goldman, thank you so much for what you do. Please don't stop.
Thank you, Nate. Great to be with you.
Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
If you have a story to share or you know someone with an inspiring journey, the FreeMind podcast wants to hear from you. Submit your story or nominate somebody to be our next guest. Check out our website, thefreemindpodcast.com, and be a part of the conversation that truly matters.